All right, welcome to Mine Explorers, episode 12, where we have another special guest. We're joined by David Reardon. David, welcome.
Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. This is great.
Yeah, so David's with Brunel, and they are a talent and talent and recruiting agency. They work across a bunch of industries, but David works in their U.S. metals and mining business, which is very relevant to us, being
Hmm.
in U.S. metals and mining and exploration. So tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. Well, a bit about Brunel, I guess, to begin with. So we're a global firm. We operate in over 45 countries, 120 offices, plus or minus worldwide. Um, I like to say we're a resource-based firm. So focusing on metals and mining, traditional energy, oil and gas, and renewables globally.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so we're present in all of the major mining jurisdictions. So we operate in the Americas, Asia, Australia, and Africa in the supporting the mining industry, which obviously is good for those larger global clients that might have a footprint in each of those jurisdictions. But specifically, I have accountability for the U.S. business for Brunel, so metals and mining space. Um, I like to sort of tangentially say I also have accountability for the heavy infrastructure because of the overlap with mining. So E&C companies, EPC companies, those type of firms.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Interesting.
Yeah. One of the things we usually like to ask guests is, how did you get into mining? It's
Hmm.
always a different
Oh
story.
boy. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think so. When I was doing my studies, I was a finance and operations management um, degrees in college. I didn't have design specifically to go into mining. I'm not a technically trained geologist or mine engineer. Um, but I think like most people, we find ourselves in an industry that we didn't expect ourselves to. So right out of college, I went to work for an industrial chemical firm. So in a business development role, so selling into one of my primary markets was selling into the mining industry. So it was based out of the Pacific Northwest. So we at the time had a lot of business going on with what operating mines there were in the Northwest, but I had accountability for Alaska and Canada. Um, and so that really set the hooks in me sort of from an early age with regards to working uh, with the mining industry. Um, Fast forward quite a few years, I ended up working for Tech Resources for a number of years. So I was working at the Red Dog site in Alaska, running their supply chain operations function up there. Um, had some time spent in the Vancouver office, both in a commercial and a supply chain operations role based out of Vancouver. Um, so for me, yeah, there's no better space to be in than the mining industry. It's such a
Yeah.
That's
critically important
awesome.
area for us. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. There's probably some overlap. You'd probably enjoy talking to our CRO, Bill Schneiders, he worked for Nalco for a long
Okay.
time, and he was with their business development, and so
Mhm.
he traveled all over, probably visited a lot of the same mines you did, selling, water treatment,
Hmm.
Yeah.
chemical systems, all that stuff, and he speaks very fondly of those years and how it got him into, he was traditionally a mining engineer by schooling, and then he was a laborer in a coal mine, and then he transitioned that to the sales role. And then once he got into business development and doing that, he stayed, for 4 decades in that, which is pretty interesting. But yeah.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing about the mining industry?
Oh gosh, I I I, I think just the recognizing just the importance of mining is, or how important mining is to, and you're seeing it all over our, not only our economic, but our national security. And for me,
Hmm.
um, just being able to work in an industry that has sort of that bedrock foundation. Um, it's, yeah, like I said, for me, there's no better space. Yeah,
Yeah.
the heavy industries, industries in general. So be it, metals and mining, oil and gas, sort of those traditional old world heavy industries. Um, yeah.
Yeah, we're the foundation of civilization,
Yeah.
You can't do much without mining. You can't do much
Yeah.
without farmers either.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. It's really where it all starts. I mean, oil and gas and mining and yeah, the heavy industries. I mean, it's the base of everything. So,
mhm.
talking about national security, um, there's Trump's executive order and could bring a huge headwind or tailwind of
Yeah.
business in mineral exploration and mining into the United States. How do you see that from a talent and labor perspective?
Yeah, we're having those very conversations. I mean, not only with what we're seeing now with the new administration, but even prior to that, under the previous administration, the number of shovel-ready projects and the number of and just the sheer amount of activity that's had started in the previous administration has already started to put a strain on talent, right?
Yeah.
There's so much overlap over the next 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 years with key infrastructure projects. And I'll use infrastructure, meaning whether it's, civil roads and bridges and mining projects, um, that there's already a strain on the talent pool. It's only going to exacerbate over the next few years. So, and then compound that with if we're now fast tracking permitting for development of new projects, exploration projects, um, it's gonna get more exacerbated. From my perspective and the conversations that I'm having, at least at a higher level with the larger global firms, they're very keen and very interested in looking at how can a company like Brunel support them with a variety of solutions, not just headhunting, right? Because at the end of the day, a lot of headhunting is just we end up recycling the same people from one to another.
Yeah.
We got to come up with better solutions, right? Because
Right.
that's not sustainable. It's not
Right.
sustainable from an availability standpoint, a compensation standpoint. All we're doing is driving up rates. So I like to think that the progressive, proactive companies are really looking to us to help develop those flexible solutions, whether it's contract placements, whether it's global mobility, helping them support movement across the Americas, for instance, or moving them across people across globally. Those type of solutions versus just recycling people from one company to the next.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've never really thought about it from that perspective, but yeah, headhunting, yeah, you're not adding to the pool, you're just shifting things around and
Right.
it is inflationary because to get someone to move from one to the other, you're paying them more. But yeah, the mobility is interesting because I've found a lot of younger people over the last really couple decades in the United States have people who would traditionally go into engineering or geology or things like that have ended up getting into programming and tech and doing those sorts of things. But I've seen on the flip side in like the Middle East and Africa, there's a lot of engineers. I get probably less than I used to, but 2 or 3 resumes a week from
Yeah.
engineers in the Middle East and Africa that are out of school and they're looking for work. And it's like, wow, if we could move these people over. And for a firm like ours,
It doesn't make any
small
sense.
boutique, like dealing with all the work visas and all that. So it's way beyond what we could do. But as a global firm, I mean, I think you could really leverage some good solutions there.
Yeah, I think definitely the global firms with footprints in multiple jurisdictions. I mean, they just have that natural ability because they're already internal to a company. They can move people around
Yeah.
much easier than say, yeah, you're going to go recruit, mining engineers out of Africa or one of the other jurisdictions. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, our immigration system isn't set up to manage and handle that effectively.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Especially not, one or two people at a time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a lot of
Well, it's
work.
interesting. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's interesting. And you started to touch on a point that we're starting to see, um, this shift in, not only is mining going to be dependent on the mining engineers, the geology, environmental engineering, those sorts of roles, but this heavy push and lean into the tech side of the business.
Mhm.
And we're seeing it everywhere across all disciplines. And we just recently, and you may have read it, published a report called the Talent and Tech Trends in the Mining Industry, and it's a global survey of 1,000 executives that we surveyed, and the whole premise of it was to understand what is more important, or where's the industry headed from an investment standpoint. Is it into talent, or is it into technology, or some combination there, both? um, and essentially what the reports are finding, and the report and people are saying, is that it's not one or the other, but it's a combination of both, and equally are important.
Mhm.
But to deal with this talent scarcity, might be the best word I can come up with, is this emphasis on, we have to do more with less. We have to look at automation. We have to look at artificial intelligence. We have to look at all of the data, or all of the technology tools, in order to help bolster a scarce talent pool. And so we're seeing a real investment in that. So the conversations that we've been having, mining companies are looking for more data analytics people, more data sciences people, more people with AI and automation experience. And they're reaching out, and they want to look broader than the traditional mining industry, right?
Right.
So back to the point about, we're not just going to recycle people through the mining industry, but we're talking to people, um, um, the automotive industry, that have lots of automation experience, might not have mining experience, but lots of automation and plant automation experience. Oil and gas, with heavy, oil and gas has led, I think, in the heavy industries in the resource space, with advanced analytics, AI into understanding, geological models, those type of things to optimize the resource. So we're seeing a lot of that activity and a lot of that demand and those discussions taking place in the mining industry.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, oil and gas, it's amazing the technology that goes into
Yeah.
fracking, for example, all of the mixtures and the pressures and the way they drill and all of the angles and how they space
That's very
all the
technical.
horizontals and everything. I mean, it's really cool. But yeah, a lot of that can have parallels. Even in our company, so we have 22 full-time employees, and we have two that just full-time do data analytics, AI, things like that, even at a small company. So I could see that really growing.
Well, that makes a lot of sense to be pulling people from other industries, because it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have any knowledge of mining. I mean, we're a small firm, and I think we only have about 5 or 6 people who even have a mining background at all. And the rest we've just trained.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't expect, when people come and interview, unless they're a geologist or a mining engineer,
Yeah.
we don't really expect them to come with any type of mining experience. I mean, our entire landman department, we trained them from the ground up.
All of them.
And all we wanted was like, hey, a little bit of GIS, perfect, we can train the rest.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of having that different mentality of like, we don't need people from the industry, we just need people who are willing to learn a new skill set. And I think there's a lot of people out there, they just probably have no idea that these opportunities even exist.
Right. And I think that also speaks to, and we're all hearing it. We all read the same headlines, but the perception of the mining industry as a career of choice.
Yeah.
It's It's good. That's getting lots of attention. And I think, over time we'll start to change and chip away at that. But I think, to your point, mining's never been looked at as a career of choice for a lot of folks in those sort of advanced technical disciplines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that we're also seeing, and it's covered in that report that we published, is the importance of, say, taking somebody that, might come from a different industry that doesn't have a background in, a mining specific discipline, and running them through upskilling or micro credentials or those type of programs. Boise, like for instance, Boise State, and I'll give them a plug because I'm having some discussions with them, is doing a good job with their materials resource and sustainability program, where it's pulling in people from other disciplines and exposing them to the mining industry. So, to the point, people might not have any relevant experience or even an appreciation for the industry or for what goes on in it, but can get those, that kind of micro credentialed or maybe a graduate level exposure to it, where they don't have a whole undergrad discipline that they may have already gone through.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So I did read your report yesterday, and it was the first time I'd ever seen the word micro credentials. So I was going to ask you, like, what is
Yeah.
that exactly?
Yeah, and it's, I gotta say, again, Brunel being a global firm, we take a lot of what might be advanced or best practices in other countries and are bringing those into the States. So micro credentials is a term that is predominantly used in the European countries.
Okay.
Right. So it might not resonate the right way over here. So maybe it's a branding thing or something like that. But it's that very premise that we can take somebody that has a good fundamental technical aptitude and expose them through different coursework or upskilling programs, to where they can at least take that technical aptitude into a new discipline
Okay.
type of thing. So now it's not going to turn a finance guy into a geologist,
Right.
but it at least exposes you to be able to be more relevant within the industry.
Sure.
Yeah, and that makes a
lot
lot of sense. Yeah, to be effective inside of any organization, there has to be a certain amount of overlap with all the roles you interact with.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, mining engineers want to do strictly engineering, but without an understanding of geology, at least on a basic level, it's really hard to be an effective engineer. And likewise, as a geologist, you have to have at least some mind for the engineering aspect. As an economic geologist, you have to have some mind for the engineering aspects, because ultimately that's the goal of any economic geologist, is to drive projects to production, which is where you interact with the engineers. So having that overlap, I mean, even in finance, like our whole finance team, not traditionally from mining, but they understand it enough to be able to speak very intelligently about, they not only do our finances, but they can look at a client's exploration budget and know what's normal, what's not, this is excessive. They can understand that stuff. So yeah, I love the concept. Crystal and I both do not have a formal education in mining, so we're just stacked up with a lot of micro credentials.
There you go. You're my case study then.
Yeah, and from everything from, I mean, Crystal went to trade school to be a massage therapist.
I did that for
Okay.
5 years.
I took some geology in college, but mostly I was studying digital media and multimedia. And then along the way, we've taken classes. I did a course. I got a certification in corporate finance with Columbia Business School, so I could understand valuations and things better when we got into that as a business. But that's the only formal stuff. Everything else has been like going out with a geologist, hey, teach me about this deposit style and what does this mean?
Yeah.
And we've done that for every commodity we've worked in. And so it's just a lot of those little micro credentials stacked up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think I think it's going to be the trend. You know, I mean, we've all seen the stats. We've all read the headlines, you know, mining school enrollments. I mean, what, off by half
Yeah.
in the developed countries, right? In Canada,
Yeah.
US, and Australia.
Australia's really bad. Yeah, I
Yeah.
read, I think 2 years ago they had like 4 grads in mining engineering in the entire country.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely right. I think they're,
Yeah.
yeah, I think we're going to probably see some right sizing and consolidation at the mining schools. There's just not enough people going into the programs to sustain, what are we now, 12, 14 programs?
Yep.
There's got to be some consolidation there, which is, you know.
There was a act I read about yesterday, a mining schools act that was
Mhm,
John Hickenlooper and somebody else from Wyoming
mhm,
put in, and I didn't dig into it. I just read the headline, but it was about that, developing the mining schools, encouraging enrollment in mining schools. So, and that was a bipartisan effort, which is encouraging. So I know there's some of that push, but yeah, it's bad. I've talked to the chair of the mining engineering program here at the U of U, and they're constantly looking at like reorganizing the department. How do we get more enrollment? How do we get more funding? It's a constant struggle there because yeah, they have programs that they don't have anyone in, and that's a problem.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, the legislation with it's essentially the grant program that they're trying to pass. It's, I think they initially want to fund it with 10, $15 million, something like that. Doesn't seem like a large amount, but I think, yeah, it's good to see bipartisan support for the industry. And I think we're seeing that across multiple fronts, not just executive orders, but actual legislation from a bipartisan standpoint. I think that'll certainly help, I'm hoping.
Right. I mean, it's a step in the right direction. I think we just need to get the ball rolling. I mean, we're
Yeah.
probably about 5 years behind, but better late than never, I suppose.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we
That's right.
talked about this a couple episodes back. Crystal and I sat down and we said, just on the infrastructure, the exploration infrastructure, which is where we work really heavily on the exploration end with geologists who do exploration and the labs that do all the samples and the assays, the drilling companies that go out and do all the exploration drilling. I was saying, you know, right now I can get a rig to drill a hole, assuming it's permitted and ready to go. I can get a rig anywhere in the United States in about a week because there's a lot of availability. But I figured even an extra 5% of push in mineral exploration in the United States, that availability goes from a week to maybe 3 months.
Mhm.
And then if there's a 10% increase, that goes to like 6 months and then it continues. But that's across the whole chain.
Oh, there's going to be a bottleneck on every single
Yeah,
stage.
because the labs right now can return your sample in 3 weeks and you get your results back. That could go to 3 months really quickly with just a small increase in volume, because all of those companies, you know, they have economics, they need to make money, so they stay right sized. And if all the drilling contractors are all suddenly trying to recruit drill hands and all the labs are suddenly trying to recruit technicians, like it doesn't, we're running so lean right now that just a small incremental increase is going to cause a lot of bottlenecks, and a lot of that's on the talent side.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. It's the exact conversation that I've been having. Um, exactly right. You like I said, we already know, you know, the projects that are permitted, call them shovel ready or close to being shovel ready, that are out over the next few years, that we're going to struggle with.
Yeah.
We're going to struggle with them. And then
Yeah.
there's this push to add more to it. And again, I'll go back to kind of what I started with. It's those companies that recognize that are need to get proactive, need to come up with and develop a flexible solution to how they're going to staff those projects. Now I tend to work because I have come out of the operations standpoint, and I'm working to build Brunel's exposure in business to the entire life cycle of a mining project, right? I mean, now that might be 100 years long in some cases, but
Right.
being able to understand and support from what is an early exploration project all the way through into permitting and mine design, operations and production, closure, remediation, or reclamation. That might be again 50 years, but very different disciplines and very different strategies can go into play in each of those different pieces of the cycle. So we're doing a lot of work right now at the very tip of the spear with the exploration and the E&C companies that don't necessarily maybe have some of the same exposure to, I guess, the strategy or the solutions that Brunel has to offer. They've always been a very, hey, I need a body, I'm going to go direct hire it. They tend not to look at, say, contract placements or working with a company that has mobility solutions and those sorts of things. So I'm really working hard to bring a suite of offerings to those companies that say, hey, again, we're going to be competing for talent in 2 years. Let's get smart about developing what that roadmap is going to look like today and how we're going to support it.
It's smart.
Yeah.
Because we're looking at, there's some big major projects that they're going to need a lot of talent. I mean, Resolution, there's several large mines in Arizona. There's, Nevada, there's Thacker Pass that's getting pretty advanced in permitting. There's a few different mines that'll come online that'll suck up a lot of that talent really quickly. And thinking ahead, I mean, it's smart, and they do. The big global firms, they when they commit to developing a world-class deposit in any commodity, they're looking at really long-term planning, really long-term investment, and really long-term investment without getting a return. And so working on the labor side of it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It's and I think for a lot of companies, I guess it goes back to thinking a bit broader about where does talent come from and who are we competing with in the mining industry. There's so many subsectors, right? We could think about, well, we're competing with the tunneling companies, right? The companies that are heavy civil infrastructure that are building underground tunneling or underground access or bridges, the heavy civil constructors, oil and gas. It's not just, okay, mining industry is going to have a real talent. This whole space is going to be dealing with the same shortages.
Yeah, that's a great point. One I haven't thought about, because it's not just the mining industry, it's the entire infrastructure industry.
Yeah, I mean, just a guy who can run a track hoe well.
Yeah. Do you know what the unemployment rate is in the US currently? I haven't looked in a while, but the unemployment rate.
Gosh, I think that's a moving target with everything that's going on in the federal government. Now, I don't even want to venture to guess.
Yeah.
I try and leave my television off
right. Yeah.
But there is a lot of competition in that. I mean, like I was saying, a guy who can run a track hoe well, he's going to be in demand across sand and gravel, crushed stone, construction, heavy construction, civil, and then in mining, so like equipment operators, things like that. I mean, and then the roughnecks who run the oil and gas patch, those guys can also run exploration rigs, and they go back and forth. And so there's always that issue going on. And then, the talent. I mean, I know several geologists who have gone back and forth. They'll work in petroleum, they'll come back to mining, go back to petroleum, they'll go back to mining. And so there's a lot of that interchangeability. But then Yeah, and the tech crossover is interesting too, because when you look at like the data analytics, the oil and
Oh,
gas
yeah.
guys are using a lot of that for geophysics.
Mm-hmm.
And in mining, we're slowly but surely becoming more reliant on geophysics. And we're seeing a lot of companies with their own proprietary geophysics tools, but interpreting those results is all heavy data. And so, like, geophysicists are rare and few already, and they're going to be in huge demand. But I think that's an interesting crossover because they can also really start to train up AI models and things like that to be able to do a lot of the groundwork for them, teach it what to look for. So that'll be an interesting space to watch as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think, and you started to key in on it. When we talk about the skill, there's skilled trades, and then there's sort of the professional disciplines, the technical disciplines. And I think if we take a step back as an industry, when we're talking about how do we promote mining as a career of choice, not only in the skilled trades but in all the disciplines, the recognition that an equipment operator may not be thinking mining, but the just the scale of opportunities for people even coming out of high school. Like, I have high school age kids, and I'm heavily promoting, okay, if you don't want to go be a mine engineer, fine, but think about a skilled trade, because you could take that anywhere. And if you want a global type of career, look at mining. Mining will take you all over the world.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We just had that conversation in our last episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With JP, he wanted to travel the world, but he also wanted to be outdoors a lot. And he had a professor pull him aside. He was going to go into forestry, and he had a professor pull him aside and say, if you really want to see the world and you really want to spend time in the outdoors, become an exploration geologist. And he did. But yeah, the accessibility, I mean, you think about the trades just even broader, like equipment operators, always in demand. And maybe, we're going to automate a lot of the haul trucks and stuff, but somebody who can really operate like a track hoe well.
But you're still going to need mechanics.
They're in demand, and they're going to be in demand. But like electricians, for example, you can be an electrician, you can go into a program right out of high school, or even in the latter years of high school, do an apprenticeship, get into that. You can go out, you can go into mining and work all over the world. And that's very specialized, highly paid, great career. But also you could go build data centers. And that's something like AI is not going to replace an electrician anytime soon.
No.
Yeah, that's right. Not until the robots start building the robots.
Yeah. It's a long way. But yeah, the trades, I mean, we're always really pro trades in mining. And I think the narrative is shifting to back towards the trades. And I think there'll be a stampede towards the trades in 5 to 10 years, because AI is really, for AI to effectively replace a lot of the hands-on jobs, that all goes into the robotics, and that's still got a long ways to go. It's very expensive, but AI taking on a lot of the office jobs, it can already do a lot of them, and it's learning so fast how to do all that. And so there's going to be people shifting towards the trades, which could help. But as Crystal said earlier, we're already 5 years behind probably. So got some catching up to do.
We do.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's long overdue, but it is encouraging. I mean, you look at and it's obviously more at the state level. But those states, there's lots of programs at the state level that are really encouraging high school kids or maybe even graduates to go into trade programs more, either at a trade school or a community college level, that type of thing. Where I live, I'm in Washington State. We have a pretty good and active presence. Now it's more on the skilled manufacturing side, with high school kids. Mining is not very prevalent in Washington State anymore,
Right.
but we're seeing that over, in Idaho and down in the copper spaces.
Oh yeah.
That early education focus on the trades and the technical side, and I'm hopeful. Again, it's what I'm talking to my kids about. I'm hopeful with the legislation we're seeing with wanting to fund grant programs that conceptually, kids could get a full ride with grant programs to go into the mining industry. So, I'm hoping that really comes to fruition and starts moving the needle, because I'll push my kids to mine engineering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not only does it help the industry, but it's launching these kids right into an industry that's just getting ready to really take off. It's like you mentioned, manufacturing as well. Like with a lot of the re-onshoring manufacturing and stuff, like the timing couldn't be better. I mean, they're going to catch it right as everything's in demand, and they're going to be able to really take off.
Have a
So
solid career.
it's great for the kids and great for the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and you look at, and again, going back to the demand piece of the equation, and all of the mining schools are saying the same thing. Their graduates are coming out, 5, 6, 7 offers in hand, 6-figure offers right out of college, and go anywhere they want and pick and choose, right? And a lot of them with, we're seeing, the scholarships available because everybody's, trying to promote it. They're getting a lot of their college paid for as well.
That's awesome. I mean, now's probably the best time to get into mining.
Yeah.
Right now as a young person.
In many decades, generations potentially. Yeah, it's a great time to get in, and it really is like, I'm sure there's acute needs in certain parts of the industry, but it's just a broad, like, everything from equipment operators to people in HR. I mean, we're going to need the whole spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's
cool.
Yeah, exciting times.
Yeah. Any final thoughts or anything you want to add?
Oh gosh, we've covered a lot. I mean, we could spend hours unpacking everything we talked about today.
Yeah.
I'm appreciative. I love. I could talk about this stuff for hours. I think really, from my perspective and Brunel's perspective, I think we bring a lot to the conversation, and I want Brunel to be at the center of this type of conversation. And again, working with those firms on developing what are those proactive, flexible solutions to be able to support this, not only not at a transactional level, but a strategic, longer term time frame. I think the smart companies are already doing that. I think the rest of the industry needs to be thinking along those lines.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
I love that. Yeah, it's strategic long-term thinking, and then solutions out of the box, because I think the reliance on headhunting has been, it's a good patch.
Mm-hmm.
It patches things over, but it's far from a solution.
Yeah, more reactionary than proactive. Yeah.
So that's great. Yeah, and I love the idea of broadening your scope to touch more of the industry, not just operations, but the exploration side, the after mine, reclamation side, because it's all going to be affected. There's going to be demand across that whole spectrum. Everything from the exploration geologists to equipment operators to environmental scientists to the lab techs,
all of it,
and
then all the way up to the C-suite.
Yeah. I think, and I'll just maybe end on this, but I think one of the macro trends that we haven't touched on here, but you're seeing it, and I think it'll become more prevalent, is consolidation and aggregation in the industry, right? Not only on the education side of it, we talked about, mining programs are likely going to consolidate, but I think as more projects get rammed into the pipeline and realize that we're not, timelines are going to stretch because of availability of people, I think you'll start to see a natural an aggregation and consolidation of companies that say, okay, well, we're all competing for the same talent pool. Let's combine forces. Let's consolidate operations. Let's leverage the same talent pool to do multiple type of operation. So I think that's just going to be a natural evolution.
Interesting.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the micro credentials works with that as well.
Yeah, exactly.
People who are trained across
Yep.
multiple commodities and things like that. And the hyper specialization will be less relevant, I think, over time. And then
That's probably what we'll see a big influence of AI.
Yeah.
Like, is in that hyper.
yeah, you have one or two
specialization.
people who are hyper specialized and they can dig down and use their tools to do that. And then they have a broad support behind them
Yeah.
that helps. And that can be largely consolidated. So
Yeah. I think you're on something there.
yeah.
Cool. Well,
Yeah.
David, thank you. This was
Appreciate it,
fantastic.
yeah.
We learned a lot. So
Oh, good. No, like I said, I could talk about this stuff for hours. So I appreciate it. Appreciate you carving me out 45 minutes. And
Yeah.
that was
Thanks.
fantastic.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
Good.
All right. Well, we'll talk soon then.
All right. See you later.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.